This just makes me sad about retirement. It just bothers me, man, and the fact that the retirement industry has gone along with the narrative just freaking ticks me off, man. Just ticks me off. So let's look at this study from a man. Who's this guy? Paulin here, Jeffrey Paulin. This is expenditures of older Americans, expenditure patterns of older Americans from 1984 to 1997. And we're going to scroll all the way down. What page is this? Page 15, way down here. We're going to show you. We're going to show you two tables, or one table, but right here. Selected characteristics to accompany regression results. Right. We got this group right here, the 65 to 74-year-old group in 1984, and then in 1997. This is their expenditures. All right. Then we got the 75 and older age group. All right. So what matters isn't, I can't stress this enough, and I just hope I'm clear here. This right here, the 65 to 74-year-old age group in 1984 is the same as the 75 and older age group in 1997, if that makes sense. Now, are the exact same people? No. But it's the same group, the same cohort. These people who are 65 to 74 have aged into these people here. So what we don't want to compare is we don't want to compare this group from 1984 to 1997 because that's two completely different cohorts. We want to compare this group, what they spend as a 65 to 74-year-old people, compared to what they spend later on as a same cohort, but when they're older. I cannot stress how important this is. Everyone gets this wrong. It drives me up the wall. I used to get it wrong myself. So I'm going to give you an example here. You'll see average, let me just show you here. Average annual expenditures under 65, this is 1984 all the way to 1997. Average annual expenditures, this has been adjusted for inflation, real money. You can see the under age 65 people spent $37,000 in 1984, and they spent $37,000 adjusted for inflation in 1997. The 65 to 74-year-old group of people spent $24,000 in 1984, and they spent $27,000 adjusted for inflation in 1997, which would lead you to think, well, people do spend money according to the 4% rule. They do increase their spending with inflation. And that's just wrong to look at it like this. 75 and older, they spent $17,000 in 1984, and they spent $20,000 in 1997. A pretty significant increase in spending because, again, this is inflation is already baked into this. But that's not how you look at it. How you look at this, say, under 65, this cohort right here, they spent $37,000 in 1984. All right, but then we go, we just put it right here. 6 years later, we assume these are the same cohort roughly. It's not a huge. I mean, this could be anybody under 65, but we're just going to use it. But then we're going to see their expenditures dropped from $37,000 to $26,000 as they age into a new age group. And it's like when I wrote my book, Relax and Retire. This is what I showed you. As they age out of this age group and age into this age group, their expenditures, this is net of inflation, has dropped significantly from $37,000 in 1984 to $26,000. This is already adjusted for inflation. In 1990. As this group aged out from 64 to 70, a 65, 74-year-old cohort to over 75 cohort, their expenditure drop again from $25,000 to $20,000. That's how you look at this. You don't look at it saying 75 and older across the board like that. You look at it, where were they at 65? Where were they at 70? Where were they at 75 and 80? That's how you look at it, because we're saying, how did your spending progress as you aged? Not to how did the people who are 65 to 74 spend 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That's irrelevant. Is how did your spending progress as you age? Did it stay the same, go up, or go down? Inherently, it went down significantly, as these numbers show. So what makes me depressed on that? Not depressed, but saddened. We're going to compare these two cohorts right here. 1984, where they were 65 to 74, then they aged out of that group, and they're now 75 plus in 1997. So let's just look at the sample size. In 1984, the sample size was 2,341. In 1997, the sample size was 300 less. All right, let's keep going. Homeowners, 1,804 in 1984. How did you have less homeowners in 1997? Well, because the sample size is smaller, and we'll get into why that's in here in just a second. Renters were roughly the same, 537 on a sample size of 2,341. Now we got 505 renters as a sample size of 2,076. So again, the sample size is going down, and the proportion amount of renters and homeowners is going down as well. But what I want to show you here is family composition. The people who are 65 to 74, 7.9% of them were men in 1984. 10.6% were single men in 1997. Again, the age group 65 to 74, basically 8% were men, single men. Almost 11% were single men 10 years later. Does that mean anything to you? Single women, 26%, 27% were single women in 1984, the 65 to 74-year-old age group. 44% were single women 10 years later. Husband and wife only, 42% were single women, or husband and wife only in 1984. Only 30% were husband and wife in 10 years later, basically. You see where I'm going with this, I hope. The amount of single men and single women increased dramatically, and the amount of married decreased dramatically. Could you attribute that to divorce? Some of it. But what do you attribute it to? Anyone want to take a guess? What do you attribute it to? Well, we can see the number of households in the sample size dropped by basically 300 or so. What does that tell you? That people are dying off. People were dying off. Significant amounts of husbands and or women were dying off. In fact, in this case, we have an increase about 30% single men from that 10-year time frame. We have an increase, I don't even know what that is, 30% of single women, maybe 40% of single women. I don't have my calculator, but so what does that tell you? All those are divorces? No, it's just not. That means a husband lost his wife, a wife lost her husband. In that time frame from 65 to 74 to 75 and older, they lost their husband. Has mortgage, 17.9% in 1984 who are 65 to 74 had a mortgage, 18%. Half that 10 years later. No mortgage, 59.2% and 67%. Why do I say this? Because how many people were scared crapless to retire? They said, we can't afford it. Honey, I know we should retire. I want to spend some quality time with you. After all, we've been married 30 years, 40 years. We put 3 kids through school. We've done all this, but I just need a couple more years of work because I need $1 million to retire. The 4% rule and all that. And all these people out there saying there's a retirement crisis, Social Security go bankrupt. And how many were denied? Like Charlotte and I just got done taking pictures, just me and her. We have a friend. She has a friend. Well, we have a friend who does it professionally, and it just got done. It was fun. It was just me and her. You know what I'm saying? And we're just talking about because my youngest is going to be out of the house a year and a half from now. We're just talking about I like the Freiburg Fair up in Maine every October. I want to go to the Freiburg Fair, and she goes, "Oh man," I was thinking I'd like to go up there this year, and I said, "Wait, next year we could go together." Because it'll just be me and her. We just got to get someone to watch the dogs. And we have 4 kids. One of them will be watching the dogs. And now I'm only 54. I'll be 55 this year. I'll be 56 next year. And she's 4 years younger than me. And thankfully, we have the financial resources, let's say here today, to afford this. But what if you didn't have the financial resources until you retired to afford this? And all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to wait. And then that never came. Or then you only had 4 years of spending time together. I've shared this with you before about one of the best things I ever did as a financial planner, and this is when I was a broker still. Had a friend of mine, a little bit older than me, probably 15 years older than me, and her husband's about 15 years older than her. Anyway, she wanted to retire. She was a nurse. I don't think she was a nurse practitioner. No, I don't think she was. She was a nurse, and she was just getting physically, it's just a tough job. I think she was 59 when I talked to her. We'll just call her Peggy. I said, why do you keep doing this, Peg? She goes, well, I can't afford to retire. I said, what are you talking about? Let's look at the numbers. I think you can. And we crunched the numbers. I said, if we get a couple bad years, you might need to tighten the belt, but generally speaking, you're looking good. Anyway, we crunched the numbers. She retired. Her and her husband, he was probably 10 years older than her. they took, he's German, he wanted to go see his homeland. And so they took a cruise, like a Norwegian cruise or whatever. And, they were able to go through Europe and stuff and see his homeland and all that. And it was cool, man. And then 2 years later, he died on Christmas Eve, died. And I'll never forget, she said, I'm just so glad we were able to spend that time together. And he wasn't that old, he was like 68. And he had a heart attack, died. And she goes, I'm just so glad. That was the best thing I could ever do as a financial planner. So I'm just glad you got those memories. Because if you would have kept working, you would not have taken that cruise, because we talked about it. Now, will that say if you retire early and you don't die, you're going to run out of money? No, we don't know. But it's just sad how the financial industry, we've known this information for decades, and yet it's never used because fear sells, dude, is all there is to it. It's a friggin' man bites dog. Oh, look at these guys that ran out of money. Or Dave Ramsey. Look at this guy who lost his house because of reverse mortgage. And it's just in the vast majority of people don't run out of money. No one gets put out because of reverse mortgage. You get put out because you didn't pay your property tax or your home insurance or something. Anyway, it's just, I hate it. It's depressing. And that's why I'm here to do what I do, to take away the darkness that surrounds the financial planning industry and tell them to go pound sand. All right. Love your thoughts. God bless. Smash that like button. We will see you.